Hey folks, this is Vint with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and once again, we're going to talk about Heroes of Hammerwatch 2. So a couple of my commenters had been asking me to make other videos, and Neophyte91 says in his recent comment, great guide, informative and to the point. Been watching other vids, they've been very helpful, thank you for that. I was wondering if you'd consider making a guide on what attributes, skills, and gear classes favor. I know it's somewhat self-explanatory, but I would like to hear and see your opinions. New to Hammerwatch and not familiar with how some attributes affect classes and what is best to prioritize. So on that note, this video is going to be geared more toward beginners. A lot of you probably already have builds that are really good, but like Neophyte here, some people are new to the Heroes of Hammerwatch universe and are not familiar with certain classes and the like. So, we're going to go over each class and dabble a little bit as to what their skills are, what kind of gear they equip, but it's going to be nothing grandiose compared to some of my other videos. Speaking of which, if you want to learn more about, the more in-depth stuff that this game has to offer, check out the links in the below description. I cover a wide variety of topics. Now, before we continue, I have to stress, some of my opinions are just that, opinions. Please don't take what I'm about to say as gospel. You shouldn't always run with the skills I'm running with. There are other people out there that have this game down to a science because they have more time than I do. So, I can only tell you what I'm doing, but please don't adopt that as the best build ever, because I'm sure I can stand to improve in certain areas myself. But I'll be happy to share what I know, and if you like what you see, then feel free to try it out. But of course, it's a game, it's your game, so definitely try and come up with your own builds to see what works for you and what doesn't. The first class I want to talk about is the Warrior, and we're going to stick to the original 4 because that's who you'll have to start the game with: the Warrior, the Ranger, the Wizard, and the Paladin. You'll unlock the Warlock, the Sorcerer, and the Rogue later on. Again, I do cover that in a different video, but we'll start with the original 4 and then work our way out from there. And as you can see, I've made some progress with my characters, and full disclosure, this is all work that I've done manually, meaning no one's run me, no one's given me any sort of cheat code or whatever. This is all me spending 80 plus hours leveling each character up through hard work and not being run by somebody else. So just so you know, it does take a while unless you're willing to get help from somebody else. So let's go ahead and jump into the Warrior. And again, I'm going to try to avoid specializations just because in the very beginning of the game, you're not going to have them. Okay, so let's talk about stats. I'm going to go ahead and hit I and open up my character sheet here. And as you can see, you're going to favor strength more than anything else. Now, in the beginning of the game, you're typically going to have a two-handed axe or two-handed, like, sledgehammer or something. More recently, I've been finding more crossbows, and I've been trying them out just for fun, and I will say it's a lot of fun. I didn't think a crossbow on a Warrior would be fun, but it is. It's a little weird because I'm not up in the thick of things like I normally am. It's just different. So it's something to try out once you get the crossbows. But typically you won't have that. You'll have like a two-handed weapon of some kind. And as far as what stats you'll be seeing, so the Warrior, as far as strength is concerned, whenever you put points into strength, not only does that increase your armor, like in most other classes, but it also increases your spell power. And as we learned from other videos that I've done, spell power affects all of your skills, which is super important. Spell power is probably one of the most important attributes in the game because spell power affects your whirling axes, your war cry, your warrior, all your spells that you can do here. These skills, that is affected by your spell power. Your weapon power is only your main hand weapon, but your spell power affects all your skills. So when you're buffing or throwing points into strength as a warrior, you're buffing both your spell power and your armor, and that's both super important. Now, if you care about critical strike and critical strike chance, then feel free to put points into dexterity, but I personally, I stick with the main the main crux of what a warrior is: beefy and strong, and that's why I put points into strength. Intelligence, same thing. If you look off to the bottom left, you'll see a guide as to what all these different icons mean, and spell crit chance. Some people, and I know my fiance actually does this. She puts all her points equally into everything. It drives me crazy. But hey, if you like to do it and it works, then do it, But personally, I stick with strength. As far as focus, which is mana and mana regen, the warrior, in my opinion, doesn't use a whole lot of mana. Even with the survivalist specialization, which you'll get down the line, which favors totems, I typically never have a mana problem. And I really don't put points into focus at all. So if I had to suggest anything, strength and vitality are going to be your two main attributes that you'll want to work with, because you're going to be up close and you're getting a lot of health, and a lot of regen, because, well, you're going to get hit a lot. So unless you're willing to pop a bunch of potions, you're going to need some way to get rid of that downtime. So as far as stats are concerned, strength and vitality are the ways to go. Personally, I've leveled Warcry and Warrior's Constitution, Killing Spree, and I'm doing a specialization right now that involves Chains and Ruthlessness. Like I said, I'm not going to get into that, the specializations, but I am doing Tyrant right now because I like the extra damage from Ruthlessness, and I like the Chains ability. But I'm doing Warcry because it buffs your weapon speed, which is great. And Warrior's Constitution will give you more health, which is good, and poison resistance. Killing Spree, there's a orb upgrade that you can eventually get that, assuming that it procs for you. But there's one that actually gives you health regeneration based on your Killing Spree stacks. So that's why I bothered to put points into Killing Spree, because it increases the stack duration. So health regen is super good as a warrior, so Killing Spree, I went with that. And if you want to see the exact loadout that I did here, there's that. I don't use rolling axes all that much. Okay, and again, feel free to experiment at your leisure. I have to stress this too. The game is super nice to you and will tell you, hey, primary strength, throw your points here. You don't have to, but I'm just saying the game does tell you that. As for what the warrior favors in terms of gear, the game is also nice to you too. If you open up your stash, you'll see what you'll have access to and why. Magic weapons, as you can see, not so much. Melee weapons, on the other hand, anything that requires a lot of agility, typically you can't use, because unless you throw points into dexterity, you can't equip them. So daggers, typically no. But you're going to have access to a lot of high strength weapons, like you've got great axes, you've got regular one-handed axes, you've got a wide variety of shields that you can equip, anything with high strength, and that should not be here. That should be under my helmet tab. But anyway, so these are the type of weapons that the warrior will favor. Just a lot of one-handed, two-handed, high strength weapons and shields. Now, if you throw points into dexterity, then yeah, you can use a knife. Or if you put a lot of points into an intelligence, which is what this one requires, then yeah, you can equip this dirk. But I don't do that personally. Okay, ranged weapons. Some of these crossbows and bows require high strength. It's weird. Like my ranger, which is a bowcaster, can't equip some of my crossbows because he doesn't have high enough strength, which is weird to me. But yeah, the warrior can, because he's got a lot of strength. And this is the build I'm currently playing with. I'm playing with a crossbow on a warrior right now, just to try it out. It's a lot of fun. Head armor, which is where I need to put that one helmet. There we go. As you can see, mage hats, anything high intelligence he cannot equip. He favors high strength stuff. Great helms, for example, that's typically what he can equip. And body armor and capes, he favors the full plates, typically. Again, high strength stuff. Yeah, so luckily the game is kind to you and will red out anything that normally you wouldn't wear. Shoes, same deal. Anything with high intelligence he won't equip, but high strength ones he will, so you want to focus on those. Gloves, same deal. I don't want to waste your time. Tomes typically require a lot of intelligence, so those are all read out. So that's typically what the warrior can handle in terms of gear, and that's what I would recommend. As far as enchanting or what things to look for, To be honest with you, I'm always like leveling, and I'm always finding new gear to replace my old stuff. And enchanting is expensive in this game. If you look off to the upper right, I've got 512 red gems, and each enchant is like 10 to 12 red gems. It's super expensive. If I were to do that on every gear that I have across every character, I'd be broke, and it would take me forever to restock that. So I don't bother too much unless it's to gain, unless I want to level quickly and want to throw an experience gain enchant on my gear to level them faster. But if I had to make any suggestions to the warrior, since you're going to be up close and personal, you're going to want to favor armor and you're going to want to favor resistance. Anything to keep you alive while you're killing stuff. Again, that's just my personal opinion. Next, we'll look at the Ranger. The Ranger is a pretty fun class to play with, but he favors dexterity over strength. And as you can see, the icons are a bit different here. In the Warrior's character sheet, you saw that under strength, you had both armor and spell power. Well, in this case, spell power has been moved to dexterity. So you're going to favor dexterity as a ranger because you're going to get your spell power, you're going to get your weapon crit chance, and you're going to get your weapon crit damage all along that line. Now, if you favor like spell power, crit chance, and the like, then you can mess with that. Typically not important, but dexterity is where you want it. I did throw some points into focus, and reason being, when I get to level 10, I have the Beast Master specialization, and I use Spirit Wolves very often. So I do need the mana in order to get just to keep spamming them whenever appropriate. It's up to you. It's just a personal touch, but I did throw some points into focus. I did throw some into vitality, but as a ranger, you're not really supposed to be taking hits. You're supposed to be staying at range. So if you're dying a lot, then sure, maybe throw some points into vitality. But ideally, you want to be a heavy hitter, a DPS class, and that's what dexterity is going to do for you. So I would favor dexterity and vitality with a little bit in focus for your skills. But, you know, again, your mileage will vary. People will tell you different. As far as your skills are concerned, Mark Shot is very important because that's just a flat-out damage increase. And there are skills that you'll get via your orb that will increase that even further against bosses or whatever. So Mark Shot, very important skill to level up, in my opinion. It's just a flat-out damage increase. Traps, I don't use. I did put a point in here. I'm probably going to respec out of traps completely and throw that point somewhere else because traps, I'm not really using them and they don't do a whole lot for me. And they stay in one spot too. Rhythm is good because that increases your weapon crit chance and per stack. It's just something that's usually always up. And you'll even see orb procs in your run that will grant you like you'll be able to, with more stacks of rhythm, do this. Or if you dash, you get stacks of rhythm. So you'll keep rhythm up most of the time, and that's just a flat-out crit chance upgrade, which is great. Survivalist, I have this maxed out as well. Just a personal preference because I'm not as dexterous as some other people. I'm older, and my hands don't work as well, and so I'm dying more than others in my case. So I do put points into survivalist. And yeah, I'm using the Beastmaster specialization, the Spirit Wolves. I like that style. So yeah, those are the stats and the skills that I'm currently using for the Ranger. As far as the gear that you can use on your Ranger, and it's going to be primarily dexterity based. This Chilling Noble Dagger of Precision, that little hand in the upper left-hand corner, that's dexterity. So anything high dexterity. So swords, knives, typically what a rogue could equip, that's what you're going to get to. So that's what you're going to favor. Shields, unless you're going to throw points into strength or get gear that gives you strength or whatever, you're not going to be able to equip these, but it is viable, I guess, if you want to maybe get somehow get your strength up there, equip a shield and maybe a weapon. You could try it. It kind of defeats the purpose of having a ranger in the first place because you're supposed to be at range, but hey, you could break the system if you want. That's up to you. So there are some dexterity crossbows, but these are one-handed ones. You'll know the difference because on the left there's only one ability, quick shot, Whereas, if you hover over this one, there's two abilities, Quick Shot and Explosive Shot. That's how you can tell the difference between a one-handed and two-handed. If something has two abilities on it, it's two-handed. If it has one ability on it, it's one-handed. This is, in this case, your offhand. And that's what I have rocking right now. I've got an offhand crossbow and a sword, primarily for parry purposes. Okay. So these are the things that you would typically equip, either a bow or a crossbow in your offhand. But keep in mind, right now, the crossbow does not have the bow tag, which is weird to me. If you hover over a bow, it says weapon, ranged, bow, physical, whereas the crossbow just says weapon, ranged, physical. There's no bow in there. Even though it's a crossbow, there's no bow tag. And that might be important because some abilities and upgrades in the like buff bows. So keep that in mind when you're taking upgrades and using a crossbow. Okay, just something to keep in mind. I hope they fix that because a crossbow really it should have a bow tag. As far as head armor is concerned, again, high dexterity crap. No intelligence or high strength. It's typically like hoods, caps. Okay. Same with body armors. There's not a whole lot of choice here. These are all cloaks that I've got. Shoes, again, just leather boots, typically. Gloves, I don't have any on me right now, but yeah, tomes, these are high intelligence. You're not going to use those. So yeah, the ranger, primarily going to be, studded bracers, basically leather crap. Studded leather, studded bracers. As far as what enchantments to look for, again, if you're leveling, maybe some experience ones, if you can find them. Or if you want to concentrate on anything that's going to do damage, because that's what the ranger is designed to do. You're designed to blow things up at range. At least, that's what you're designed to do. But again, you could break the mold if you want and do something different. Don't focus, again, too hard on finding these things, because you're always going to find gear that's better later on anyway. And going to the blacksmith and constantly leveling up an old piece of gear gets expensive after a while, and unless you've got a lot of iron to spend. So don't worry too hard about finding just the right amount of gear, just the right stat. You're going to replace it at some point anyway. The wizard, one of my favorite classes. As you can see, he's probably my highest one. He's at level 35. And the attributes that he favors, as you can see, spell power has been kind of moved to the intelligence area. And you're going to be putting most of your points there. So spell power, spell crit chance, spell crit damage, all of that is funneled into intelligence. And if I had to make a secondary recommendation, focus, that way you can keep casting spells, but vitality, more importantly. Again, that's a personal choice because, again, I'm getting older and I'm not as, I'm not as quick. So I get hits. I do take hits because I'm not good with that, jumping around all over the place. So I put points into vitality to keep myself alive, and my run doesn't end at the drop of a hat. Again, personal choice. So intelligence, focus, vitality. Primary focus is intelligence there. As far as the skills I'm currently using, I have gone into I think it's the conjuration specialization where I can conjure a hydra. That's been my primary bread and butter. And I haven't been using much of anything else. That's just a personal choice, though. I do recommend barrier, though. It's a defensive thing. It's great. It reduces your damage taken while they're up. And the more you level it, the more max stacks you get. So barrier is super important. It's a way that this caster can keep himself alive. Compared to the sorcerer, which barely has any health, saving attributes or healing, self-healing, the barrier, at least on the wizard, will keep you going if you make a mistake. So I think the wizard has slightly more survivability in this manner. This arcane intellect, mana, and that's a no-brainer. Intelligence, you have to. Intelligence. If you buff your intelligence, you buff your primary stats. So that's super important. Arcane intelligence, can't stress that enough. Fireball and magic missiles, to be honest with you, I don't use them that often. I use them to pull. And I know some of you may go, what? This is so good. This fireball's so good. This magic, again, personal choice. Personal choice. I will say that if you're a fire mage and you go into the last level and try and fight those yellow orbs, they're fire. So you're going to have a tougher time taking them down. So you may want magic missiles there to get you out of trouble. Because if your animated sword is flame and your hydras are flame and your staff is flame, you're not going to kill them quickly. So you're going to need some other element or some type of physical damage to take them out. So maybe level magic missiles as a backup. That's just, again, a personal choice that I have. And of course, magic weapons. That's where this guy is currently sitting. I mean, there's magic weapons for all sorts of elements. There's fire, there's ice, there's electricity. So pick the one that you like the best. I try to complement whatever I'm using. So if I'm using a lot of fire, if I've got gear that's focused on fire damage or whatever, maybe I'll make sure I'm using a flame staff or whatever. Again, it's a personal choice. Some say that the frost staff is insane because you can spam click it and do a crap ton of damage. So maybe the ice one, if you don't have carpal tunnel, then maybe you might get more use out of the ice staff. And of course, there's those one-handed wands that you can equip as well, and maybe a tome in the other one. That, again, it's a personal choice. So magic weapons, high intelligence crap. Melee weapons, not so much. You've got dirks. That's about it. Yeah, I mean, the only reason to maybe take this is for the parry chance. You've got a 30% parry chance with these typically. That's a 40% parry chance. That's important. I don't think the ones have a parry chance. No, they don't. Based on what I've seen anyway. So if you want parry because you're, for whatever reason, close up, then maybe. But you don't have, I typically don't do that. Ranged weapons, I don't know why you'd use a crossbow or bow as a wizard, but yeah. Head armor, high intelligence crap. That's what you're going to be getting there. Body armor, same deal. You'll have access to most cloaks, and you'll have access to these robes, which, grant you various things. Shoes, same deal. I think you get the point now where, yeah, high intelligence crap is what you're going to be shooting for. Tomes, I mean, yeah. The fire ones are cool because, I mean, again, you're going to have one of each element, fire, ice, and electrocution. I like the fire ones because they stay on the ground after someone triggers it, and anyone entering it will burn. So you can actually kill rows of weak enemies just by one of those. Whereas the other ones are just they do damage and that's it. They don't kind of linger, as far as I can tell anyway. So I like the fire one more than the others, but again, that's a personal choice that you'll have to make. Moving on to the last class you'll have access to from the very beginning, the Paladin. I personally like the Paladin. It's really the only class right now that can heal. And it's really the only class that can support other classes. Like the other classes don't get auras typically. You could, as maybe, I think it's the Wizard or the Sorcerer, I don't remember. I think it's the Sorcerer, actually. You can walk through a flame, and that will create an aura, and your allies can walk through flame and get that aura too. So there are some auras that others create, but primarily your Paladin is I feel your tank support class. And as such, you're going to be putting most of your points into strength. Now, this is where things get interesting, because the Paladin is not only a tank that needs health, but he also needs mana to keep on healing. And that's kind of where the Paladin starts to get a little, I don't know, iffy. Because you're going to want strength, because strength boosts, in this case, armor and spell power. And spell power, like I said, is good because it affects all your skills. But when it comes to vitality and focus, I'm always at ends with this because I need high health to tank, but I also need mana in order to keep casting spells. And there are skills that you can get which will recover mana. Let's go into those right now. For example, there's actually it's not a skill as much as is it a skill? Yes, that's it. Conviction. Your melee weapon hits have a chance to restore some of your mana. So if you fully upgrade this, you may not need to throw as many points into focus. That being said, you may not be able to have anything to hit at the moment, and you need mana anyway, so you may want to put points into focus. But there are abilities that the Paladin has to recover mana, which is nice. Personally, I leveled up Armored a Knight. That's just because that's what he's designed to do. He's designed to tank. His armor, plus 25, and then the percentage 25%, chance 20. So, it's amazing. You want to armor this guy up. Lay on Hands, he's the only class that can heal, so why not level that all the way up? It's super important that you do. Blessed Strike, The Paladin suffers from, in my opinion, DPS, damage per second. He can take a hit and he can heal, but he doesn't kill things so fast. Blessed Strike will be typically your primary way of doing damage to something heavily, semi-heavily. There are ways through the purple orbs to upgrade this, like leave fire on the ground when you use it. That's a good one. So there are ways to make this better so that you can do more damage, but primarily this class it feels more tanky and support than anything else. I'm personally using, I think it's the Divine, don't quote me, yeah, Divine Protection. It provides invulnerability. There's a chance, depending on whether or not you, if you take too many hits and fall below a certain health bracket, that'll activate. Divine Pillars, I just like it. That's with upgrades that'll split into like 2 or 3 different directions and do a lot of damage. That's my primary DPS dealer when I'm farming stuff for the Paladin. So just as a recap, you'll want to throw points into Strength and then Vitality. Maybe Focus if you're having a hard time keeping up with the heals. If you've got a lot of friends that are constantly taking damage and they need healed constantly, maybe bring some extra Focus along with you. I think you know the gist by now. The Paladin is a high strength character. You'll want a shield for sure. If you're going to tank, you're going to want a shield. That's just it. You could try two-handed if you want to. Sure, go for it. But I would prefer a shield, to block projectiles and the like. Ranged weapons, again, that's typically a two-handed thing, and you're going to want a shield. You could try it. I'd be interested in hearing about that, but it's just weird for a Paladin to have a crossbow because you're going to be using spells more than anything else. Head armor, high strength stuff, same thing with body capes and armor, shoes, gloves, no tomes. You'd think, intelligent Paladin. No, these are all high intelligent things. So that's primarily what you're going to use as far as like enchants. I forgot to mention the wizard's enchants. For the wizard, again, I use XP when I'm leveling, and if I'm my Hydra is fire, so on my wizard I throw a lot of if I can, I'll look for some fire enchants to make my spell power more powerful or whatever. Spell power is what I would go for by default, but XP is great too. For the Paladin, I would go with more defensive stuff. Maybe more armor and more resistance so that you can stay alive longer in a fight. Again, he does suffer from DPS. So this is a personal choice. Do you want to kill things quicker or do you want to last longer in a fight? And I have a feeling that's going to be a decision that only you can make. It's going to be, a personal choice. Some bosses are going to be hard to deal with because they keep spawning ads like Arista. Trying to stay up as a Paladin with Arista constantly spawning those plants shooting things at you, you may not survive even with a lot of resistance and a lot of armor. You may have to switch to some kind of DPS build for that, but it all depends on who you're fighting. But ideally, I'm a more tanky person. I like the resistance and the armor, but that's just me. Now, the Rogue is the first class that you'll unlock, at least I'm pretty sure it is. And this particular class is going to favor dexterity. As you can see in the attributes area, you've got spell power, you've got your weapon crit chance, and your weapon crit damage, all in dexterity. That's where you're going to want to focus. So dexterity, some vitality for sure, because you're going to be on the front line. However, one of the biggest things that a rogue has is his ability to evade. And of course, he's going to have dexterity, and that's going to mean that you're going to have daggers. So that's also going to come with some parry chance. So you're going to be up close, sure, and you're not going to have the armor that a Paladin has, but you're going to be able to evade and parry a lot more often. And that's what the abilities and the skills are designed to do. Fan of Knives, this drains, you can spam this. The cooldown is 0.2 seconds, but that'll drain your mana really quick. I try not to use this unless I absolutely have to. It's sort of like an oh crap button. Flurry of Blades, I don't touch. It's, again, personal choice. I just don't like it. It spins stuff around you. I just don't care for it. I'd rather put my efforts into, say, Sidestep. That'll keep me alive. It grants evasion and a single stack of guaranteed evasion. Keeping me alive is super important. Slice and Dice, I was thinking about possibly throwing more points into this. Hits with melee skills grant stacks of slice and dice. Each stack increases your weapon speed. Weapon speed is good because, you know, it means you do more damage quickly. So that's good. So I'm still gonna throw points into that, but with my specialization, I've been using Toxic Cloud. It just murders everything as far as like mobs. Like that's how I do my primary farming. Just group up a bunch of people and just throw them into this cloud. Now keep in mind that's a specialization. You won't get that till level 10. And I believe that's the Poison Mastery one. So again, I'm not going to touch on those because that's more level 10, not beginning of game stuff. So as a recap, Dexterity, Vitality. Very little in focus. I haven't really had a need for that. Again, gear, melee weapons, you're going to have daggers primarily. Some people will like the dual daggers, which will give you that boost. If you're very good with the mouse clicks and you're quick, you can get a lot of dashes. You can get one extra dash using this thing. Its secondary is just a lunge. So it's super powerful too. So if you're good at pointing the mouse and targeting things, when I dash, I'm all over the place because I'm old. So if you're, again, if you're good with the whole dexterity thing, I think you'll like the dual daggers. Whereas maybe if not, try the sword or the dagger with a shield, assuming you can find one that you can equip. But typically, you're not going to have enough strength to do so. But there are rare shields out there that don't have that high strength requirement. So it's going to be a personal preference. And again, that's important because you're going to want that parry chance. Look for something high in parry if you can help it. This dual dagger has plus 50%, which is great. That's a plus 50% parry chance. This one only has 20%. So it looks like you're going to favor the dual more than anything else. But again, that's completely up to you. Ranged weapons, if you want to try an offhand crossbow, by all means do it. If you want some ranged, you can totally go for that. Keep in mind, weapon damage is this stuff, like your knives and your melee and your ranged weapons, that's weapon damage, whereas spell power is your skills. So just keep that in mind. If you've got a lot of weapon damage, then maybe consider a ranged, I don't know. Head armor, you're going to want your caps and your thorn, that's fine. Body armor, yeah. Shoes, leather crap, just like the ranger. That's what he can equip. So this is what I'm currently rocking right now, the reviving level 9. I need to switch that out. I think I need a dual dagger at this point. Yeah, I'm level 25 and I'm using a level. The reason for that is the rogue doesn't provide a combat title benefit to the rest of the classes, and I've got more than enough gold. If you look in the upper right, I've got 395,000 gold. I don't need gold right now, and I've got plenty of resources, and I can't buy the blue or red gems with gold right now, assuming I can ever do it. So I'm not using him at all, which is why he's just kind of sitting with crappy gear right now. But my recommendation, dual daggers. I think that's going to be the way to go about doing that. And as far as enchants are concerned, again, I would recommend the XP one if you're trying to level him up quickly. Since he is going to be somewhat squishy being up close, if you can find gear with a high parry chance, maybe some resistance, that would be cool. That way you're not getting one-shotted by, some kind of caster. I think that would be ideal. Moving on to the Warlock, as you can probably guess, he's a high intelligence kind of character. His spell power, his spell crit chance, and spell crit damage is all lumped under that. And personally, I would emphasize vitality. And the reason being, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, I'm going to be at ranged, right? I don't need a whole lot of health. I'm just going to blow stuff up. No, this guy is an up close and personal kind of caster. And he's decent if you can spec him right to where he's constantly getting health off of others. There's something called Drain Essence. You gain stacks of essence when hitting enemies with melee skills. I have to stress that. If you put a wand on him or a staff on him, Drain Essence will not kick in. And that will probably negate 20 to 30% of like your entire build. Drain Essence is very important because there are abilities that will buff your essence. Like if you get essence from something, you get health, or if you If you drain essence from this guy, you get mana. If you drain essence, that'll grant you whatever. So there are buffs that you'll get for drain essence that are super important for staying alive. So you're gonna want a melee weapon. You could equip a staff. I've tried it. It's not bad. But if in order to use the wide range of skills the Warlock has to offer, melee. It's required melee. If you want everything, you've got to use melee. As far as the rest of it, Demon's Tail, it's like a whip. It inflicts slow and physical damage, which is good. I personally only use it sparingly. My build is the summoner build, so I typically focus on essence and summoning. And again, this is a level 10 thing. You don't have to worry about that. But just note that in order to summon fiends, I need to spend my essence. So my strategy typically is go in there, shiv, get my essence, get back out. And then when my fiends are gone, I resummon them and spend all my essence. And then while my fiends are fighting, go in there, shiv, get my essence back up. And then when my fiends are gone again, it's a loop. That's what I'm doing. And that's why Drain Essence is so important and why a melee weapon is so important. I don't use Demon's Tail that often. I don't use Dark Ritual either. However, there is a very good skill that Dark Ritual has where there's Life Leech. So I use it on the last boss of the game. The last boss will like throw this frost cloud around himself. When he's about to pop that, I pop Dark Ritual with that Life Leech, which is an orb upgrade. And it pretty much gives me all my life back from the damage I would normally take from it. So, like, that is really good. If you can find that Life Leech, the Dark Ritual is fantastic. So don't underestimate Dark Ritual. I just don't use it very often. It's great for AoE, but you have to stay in the circle in order for it to keep working. So, again, you're up and close and personal with a Warlock. So, in theory, yes, the Warlock is like one of those, I'm going to just suck the life out of you and you can't kill me. And he can. Trust me, he's good at that. But if you're surrounded by 15, 20 people getting smacked, you're not going to last very long because you're in cloth armor. Whatever. So you have to, he's one of the more strategic classes that I've played in this game. I am much more strategic with him and how I play him than almost any other character. That's just me though. Your mileage may vary. I forgot to mention Aura of Atrophy. The fact that enemies around you do less damage, since you're going to be up close and personal, I maxed that out. I maxed that out big time. So, yeah, Intelligence, Vitality. Focus, I put points in here, but I'm not really finding myself ever running out of mana, especially if you take the ability where you can get mana from your essence gathering. You know the drill. While he can equip magic weapons, I don't recommend it. He needs his melee weapon in order for that essence to be built up. And really, the only choice is a Dirk. So find a good one and use that. If you want to try, if you want to go ranged, go ahead. It's just you're not going to be able to use your essence and everything that uses it or is used by it. Ranged weapons, not so much. High intelligence hats, high intelligence robes, shoes, same thing, gloves, tomes. That's what I have in my offhand. I don't know if, I guess you could level up your strength and equip a shield, but it's not what he's really there for. A tome is good because, it's a good way of kiting things if you're in trouble. You can throw down a fire trap, for example, with your tome and kill stuff that way while you're regenerating health, whatever. But I use a fire tome, I believe. I'll have to look. Yeah, that's what I'm currently using. So I'm using a Dirk and a tome. Now, as far as like enchanting, again, I typically don't because I don't have the resources to enchant everything. But again, XP if you're leveling, and I would say since you're up close and personal with this class, I would put some resistance on him so that, in the court you're not getting one-shotted by those electric mages that will throw that electric cone at you. Those are awful, by the way. So since you're going to be up close and personal, you want some survivability, I would recommend some resistance. Last but not least, we have the Sorcerer. and this is another high intelligence class. This is I believe, the last class you'll unlock. As you can see, it's the same as the Warlock, high intelligence. You've got spell power under intelligence along with the crit stuff. Vitality, in my opinion, is going to be more important here. Reason being, I have yet to really find a way to keep my health up with the Sorcerer. The Sorcerer is a very crit chance kind of person, and I do believe, and don't quote me on this, I do believe there are certain orb upgrades that do possibly restore health for crits, but I don't remember. There's a lot going on here, but the Wizard has Barrier, and the Warlock has like the Siphon abilities, and the Shiv, drain essence and get health back. So the other casters have some way to negate damage. It doesn't seem like the Sorcerer has that. When I'm playing as the Sorcerer, I can wreck. I can absolutely wreck mobs and clear hallways. I've got a couple of... there's the electric specialization and the fire specialization. Both are wonderful. And I can get through stages no problem. What I struggle with are boss fights. Okay? And that's really the difficulty with me anyway. I'm having trouble staying alive. So I'm having a hard time with the Sorcerer in boss fights and doing enough damage to take them out because I'm so squishy. So I would recommend Vitality as a second stat. So Intelligence and Vitality. Focus, I typically don't have any trouble with that. I do prioritize mana trinkets and the like, so I'm constantly having mana. Otherwise, I'm worthless. So that's going to be super important there. But as far as the skills are concerned, I know a couple of people that love this discharge ability. They turn it into flame via the orb upgrade, and then it penetrates everything and does a crap ton of damage. And I'll have to try that. So I do want to try that. I just haven't. And I don't usually use the discharge. The elemental orb is interesting because it does damage of all element types, but with a particular upgrade, you can use your elemental affinity to like turn the orb into something special, like just electric or just fire, which will complement whatever specialization you're using. The Sorcerer, typically you pick one element and you specialize in it. And that's how much damage you do. A lot of damage in that element type. So if you're a fire sorcerer specialist, you'll be turning your orb into fire typically through your elemental affinity upgrade. So this is a fun caster class, in my opinion, with low survivability. But it can nuke things. Trust me. It clearing entire hallways with my electric specialization, and that there's an electric ball that I shoot. It's so satisfying. It is. But you're going to have trouble surviving, I think, in my opinion. So survivability, vitality is the way to go. Magic weapons, I recommend a staff. If you're a fire specialization, do a fire staff. If you're electric specialization, do the electric staff. If you're frost specialization, do the frost. It just makes sense. Make sure you're paying attention to what kind of damage your staff is doing and what specialization you currently are, and swap out as appropriate. But as far as everything else, I mean, high intelligence crap is what they can wear. Tomes don't. If you want a wand and a tome, fine. I like my stabs more, but that's just me. And as far as the enchanting is concerned, again, my issue with this class is getting nuked, especially by elemental crap. So my personal recommendation is find gear that's going to give you resistance. That way you can stay alive in a fight and hopefully outlast the boss if you can. As food for thought, if there's a particular skill that you're not using and don't plan to use it ever, instead of maxing out that skill tree, consider throwing skill points into trinkets. Specifically the trinkets that will buff whatever your character is good at doing. So for example, if you're a caster class, you're going to want to find anything that gives you spell power. Okay, and if you're having trouble staying alive, maybe find something that gives you some kind of resistance. This is my Sorcerer, and yeah, I need to take that. infused amethyst for lightning resistance. I am going to take that. So anything that you can do to attune your trinkets to such a way to where it's going to complement your class. And I know some of you are going to go, well, I prefer to max out my skill tree first before doing this. Completely fine. Absolutely do it if you want to, because skills will always be with you, whereas there's a chance that you'll find a trinket in your run. You won't always see it. You're not always going to get the Girdle of Might in your run. You're not always going to get the Spiked Pauldrons in your run. You're not always going to get them. So there's a chance that you'll get them, but not always. So yeah, skills, yeah, they're always going to be with you, fine. I understand the argument. I agree with that. But personally, I may never use a particular skill because I don't like it. So instead, I'll come here and buff the trinkets that will complement my class. So if you're a caster, having trouble staying alive, get some resistance trinkets. Or if you're having trouble with health, get some health, whatever. You find the trinkets that seem the most important to you and buff those using your skill points. But again, that's later down the line when you've upgraded your town and upgraded the appropriate buildings. And there you have it. I apologize if this video was a lengthy one. I didn't think it was going to be, but it turned out to be anyway. I hope I answered your questions. And again, keep in mind, this video is geared more toward beginners who are getting used to the game and don't know too much about the classes themselves. I'm sincerely hoping that the developers do add a priest class later on down the line, just because I would love to see a dedicated healer. The Paladin is the only class that can really support and heal. I would love a class that can throw auras out there and can heal. I would love that. So here's hoping. I'm crossing my fingers that we get more classes later down the line that will complement some of these other classes. But anyway, this is Vince. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you all next time. Take care.